On today's episode of the J Area Podcast, we talk about the fallout of AEW All In. A new Intercontinental Championship tournament is on the horizon, and NXT crowns a new number one contender in TNA's Joe Hendry. All this and more on this episode of the J Area Podcast. What is going on, pro wrestling fans? My name is Jose Ramos Jr. This is the J Area Podcast, and a lot to talk about, especially in regards to AEW All In. If you haven't already, please go and check out my post-show reaction to AEW All In, where I discuss my immediate thoughts, opinions, emotions following the conclusion of that pay-per-view. But for the purposes of this episode of the J Area Podcast, I really wanted to center on Bryan Danielson. I talked about it briefly in that video, as I mentioned, about Bryan Danielson, about the retirement, about just the match itself against Swerve Strickland. Bryan Danielson, I believe, is among one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, not just of this generation, but just of all time. Not only is it in his wrestling ability, but it is in his craft, his character, everything that he has worked on up until this point in his career has solidified his place in the history books of pro wrestling. And obviously, we know, had you seen the conclusion of All In, Bryan Danielson crowned the new AEW World Champion. He will not be retiring just yet. Although his retirement is on the horizon, we still have a little bit of time to enjoy this last run for Danielson. Now that he's the new world champion, we have other matches to look forward to, especially with Darby Allin, who had won, the Royal Rampage matchup. He has a scheduled championship opportunity coming up at Grand Slam against Bryan Danielson. We know that Christian Cage, who had won the Casino Gauntlet match, now holds a contract for a world title match at his disposal, at his choosing, very similar to that of the Money in the Bank contract. But I wanted to focus in on retirement. And pro wrestling, very notorious for its retirement matches, for its career versus career matches, or title versus career matches, I should say. And nothing is really final. You look at some of the greatest to ever have done it, have their send-off, have their swan song, guys like Shawn Michaels, Edge, Ric Flair, The Undertaker, Sting most recently, and for a lot of instances, it's not really the end. We would like to think that when it is a title versus career or someone's career is on the line, we look at it as an opportunity to really celebrate an individual and celebrate their career and their accomplishments, which is what I was ready to do for Bryan Danielson. And boy, do I tell you, how happy I was wrong. Leading up to the pay-per-view event, you would know that there were some videos that I published where I had selected Bryan Danielson to defeat Swerve Strickland to win the world title, continuing on his career. But then towards the end, I did settle on the decision to select Swerve Strickland as the winner for that match. And I thought Bryan Danielson would go off and enjoy retirement, enjoy time with his family, and really have an opportunity to rest and relax and enjoy the fruits of his labor. Now, Bryan Danielson, as we mentioned, will not be doing that. Very much similar to a lot of wrestlers who haven't. For me, I go back to one of the earliest memories of mine of a career on the line match. It was 2008, WrestleMania 24. Ric Flair was in this final farewell tour where every match he had, there was an opportunity for him to retire. He would have matches against the likes of Mr. Kennedy, MVP, Shawn Michaels, of course, is the one that would retire him, but each match had his career on the line. So we were of the assumption, we were of the mindset that Ric Flair would be retiring at any moment. And so we had his matchup at WrestleMania 24, which goes down as one of my favorite WrestleManias, just overall on the sense of vibes and also of match quality. The main event, Edge versus The Undertaker. We had the WWE title in a triple threat match, the Money in the Bank matchup, and of course the match at hand, Ric Flair versus Shawn Michaels. Ric Flair would lose that matchup and have to retire. But then you fast forward to 2009 and 2010, and Ric Flair is in TNA Wrestling, and he's competing in matches, kind of nullifying everything that we had put in place when it comes to the WWE and its retirement plan for him. He wouldn't be the only one, though, that would follow suit. Mick Foley, who very notorious for his choice in matchups and his reputation of being the hardcore legend. We know that in 2000, it was towards the end of his career because he had done everything he needed to do. He won the world title, he competed at WrestleMania, he did everything he had to do. So we knew at No Way Out 2000, Mick Foley put his career on the line in a Hell in a Cell match against Triple H, and he would lose. He would have to retire. And of course, if you're a diehard pro wrestling fan like me, you know that maybe not even a month or two later, he's already being promoted for WrestleMania 2000 in that fatal four-way matchup against the likes of Triple H, Big Show, and The Rock. Pro wrestling and retirements really have an interesting relationship with the fans. We would like to think that once someone retires, it's over. Not the case. But those are two instances where there are individuals who have been, they kind of chose to retire. They recognize they read the room and realized maybe it was time to call it a career. Mick Foley and Ric Flair would go on to have several matches after the fact, but then you have the special cases of individuals like an Edge, like Bryan Danielson, like Shawn Michaels, who were forced into retirement at some points in their career. And when you introduce the idea of an injury, never fun for a pro wrestler. You want to be able to go out on your terms. That's why this run for Bryan Danielson is so important, because he can go out on his terms. In 2015, Daniel Bryan, at that time known as Daniel Bryan, had won the Intercontinental Championship in a ladder match at WrestleMania 31 and would have to vacate the title due to injuries that he sustained throughout the course of his career. And it wouldn't be until early 2016 that he announced he would need to retire due to these injuries. Daniel Bryan would have to sit on the sidelines for years until he finally was medically cleared to compete in wrestling again in 2018, when he returned as a tag team partner for Shane McMahon against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn at WrestleMania 34. In that instant, Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan, whatever you call him, he had a second lease on his wrestling career. So he would go on to have, like I mentioned in other videos, runs with the WWE title as the eco-friendly champion. He had a reunion with Team Hell No. He had a great run against Roman Reigns in 2021, leading to his, banishment from the WWE. Now he comes to AEW and in the summer of 2021 has a great match against Kenny Omega, has runs against the likes of an Eddie Kingston, Chris Jericho, most recently Will Ospreay, and now is the AEW World Champion. We really get to see Bryan Danielson in his element and enjoy his style of pro wrestling with little to no limitations. Every match now, moving forward, as if it wasn't already the case, we knew that Bryan Danielson had announced that this would be his final year in pro wrestling because he wanted to focus on time with family. So we knew and we understood that every match now we have to enjoy, we have to appreciate. But now that he's the world champion, there was very little that we can do going past that. There's nothing more above it. For me, if you ask me my opinion, he loses that title, that's his last match. Because it's not like you're going to lose the title and have a rematch. Why? He's going to retire. Whoever defeats Bryan Danielson for the World Championship will be recognized as the man that retired the American Dragon. And I stand firmly on the notion and on the prediction that I had a couple weeks ago when I said Bryan Danielson, if he wins the title, which he did, he would hold on to the title, have a mini run as the champion to ultimately drop the title in the state of Washington, his home state, at Wrestle Dream. I think that is the end game. I think that is ideal, because now we give everybody what they want. We give the fans, Bryan Danielson as a champion. We give him a small run there, and although Bryan Danielson may not have wanted to be at that top spot, he's earned that much. Just like how Sting, when he retired as a tag team champion with Darby Allin. He retired with a win. That's what AEW is about right now. They want to reward, they want to celebrate the all-time greats. And I'm so excited to see what we go with in terms of Bryan Danielson's final match. I think we still have Swerve Strickland at play to defeat Bryan Danielson. Darby Allin is a fun matchup. I'm looking forward to that. I don't think that's going to be the guy. I think in terms of the current roster, we're looking at Swerve, maybe Hangman, but I go back to an interview that Bryan Danielson had not too long ago, I believe it was like a week ago, where he described his goal, his dream would be to put over a fellow Washington native. So whether it is Darby or Swerve, it's going to be one of those guys because you're going to be in the state of Washington from one Washington guy to another. It's a perfect transition. It would make sense for it to be Swerve Strickland just in terms of the continuity and of the storyline. But it also would be a great opportunity to elevate someone like Darby. Give Darby Allin that rub, two undersized wrestlers who are among one of the more beloved wrestlers among the fans. I think it's a great seamless approach and a great transition. But regardless, what they did with Bryan Danielson at All In, they really treated him like wrestling royalty. You saw the entrance with the final countdown. The fan reception was tremendous. The match itself was everything you could ask for. And on top of that, having the presence of his family there was very crucial to the story. Because it could have gone either way. You could have had his family there. So if Bryan Danielson were to lose, he's consoled by his family. You have this moment in the ring where he waves goodbye to the fans and he closes one chapter of his life while entering the next phase and walks out standing tall with his kids in his arms and his wife by his side. And it would have been just a beautiful moment and a great way to close this chapter of his book. Or, on the flip side, what we did get was the ultimate celebration reminiscent of his WrestleMania 30 victory. Bryan Danielson in the middle of the ring with the World Championship, his friends and his family really in the Blackpool Combat Club, Claudio and Wheeler Yuta. Of course, Pac was there as well, who's now a trios champion with them. His kids, his wife, and again, a beautiful scene. Regardless whether it was lose or win, Bryan Danielson was going to close out that show in a beautiful and touching manner. And I'm so happy that they went that route. I, again, had predicted a Bryan Danielson loss, but I'm totally okay and content with being wrong with that and seeing him as the current reigning and defending AEW World Champion. But we talk about championships, and I don't know about you, but I'm very much a fan of tournaments. Well done tournaments. And the WWE had announced last week on Monday Night Raw that we will be seeing a new tournament to crown the number one contender for the Intercontinental Championship in what many are suspecting to be a championship match at the Bad Blood pay-per-view or PLE event, whatever you want to call it. Bad Blood. Bron Breakker's looking for a new challenger. Bron Breakker winning the Intercontinental Championship at SummerSlam. I'm excited to see what his reign will look like ultimately. I think we have a long list of names that are capable of winning this tournament and being a suitable challenger for Bron Breakker. You're thinking about guys like Jey Uso, guys like Ilya Dragunov, Chad Gable, Bronson Reed. There are many names. Braun Strowman. Like, there are so many names right now on the Raw roster that would be suitable challengers for Bron Breakker. And I love a good tournament. If you ask me right now, I think the odds-on favorite is Jey Uso. We know Sami Zayn is out right now, so we're going to kind of focus on Jey Uso. And I think for the purposes of continuity, being that Sami Zayn is the individual that Bron Breakker had defeated for that Intercontinental Championship, I think it would make sense for his friend, his ally in Jey Uso to be the next challenger. Now, will that be the case? Who's to know? I think Ilya Dragunov would also be a really good selection to win this matchup. I don't know how they would do it. Maybe you have Ilya versus Jey Uso in the finals and have them have that rematch from the King of the Ring in the King of the Ring tournament. Jey Uso defeated Ilya Dragunov. Well, what if in the return matchup in the Intercontinental Championship tournament you have Ilya Dragunov return the favor and defeat Jey Uso, cashing in on an opportunity to face Braun Breaker for the Intercontinental title. I'm looking forward to it, and I feel like a broken record when I say that, but because pro wrestling is on an extreme high right now, and the hot streak that the WWE especially has been on, how can you not? How can you not? They've been killing it. They've been doing so well. And speaking of doing really well, we talk about TNA's Joe Hendry. Joe Hendry, who's been flip flopping from one company to the next, whether it's NXT or TNA. Joe Hendry has consistently been a top star wherever he is. He had gone supremely over, not only with his presentation and his personality and his wrestling ability, but his theme song, his entrance theme song, has gotten so catchy it has taken TikTok and Twitter by storm, to the point where he's been highlighted on TNA Wrestling and NXT as a sole star for each promotion. If you were watching NXT, you would think he's a member of the roster. Of course, for us wrestling fans, we know he's inked the deal with TNA. But seeing that he had won that triple threat match last week on NXT, earning a number one contender, ship to the NXT title, and essentially a title match this upcoming Sunday against Ethan Page for the NXT title. Unprecedented waters here for Joe Hendry, because he's just coming off of a TNA World Championship match at the past event for TNA and at Slammiversary, and I don't think he's gonna win the NXT title, which again, spoiler alert, because I will be having a prediction video later out in the week regarding NXT No Mercy. But to see how Jordynne Grace crossed the line to NXT challenged for the women's championship, and now Joe Hendry doing the same thing that Jordynne Grace did. This promotion, this cross promotion, I should say, between the two companies has been well done. I think it's been well balanced. I know there was early criticisms that like TNA wasn't getting the star power of NXT to their brand, but you're still getting quality matches out of guys like a Charlie Dempsey. You're still getting quality appearances by Wes Lee, who had joined the Radicals at that point in time, and some surprises like Tatum Paxley, like having guys like Riley Osborne, who actually qualified for their X Division matchup coming up at Emergence. TNA right now and NXT are underrated at that aspect because everyone's talking about AEW and WWE, but I do think the Joe Hendry story is certainly something to watch. And now speaking out loud and discussing how the pattern of this NXT TNA cross promotion has been going, I might have to be, reconsidering who I think wins that main event match at No Mercy. But of course, that is yet to come. Check out the NXT prediction video later out in the week for my final picks, and we talk about predictions, and we talk about the future in the main event scene. I really wanted to hit close to home here with Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens, because for me it's kind of hard to predict what they're going to go with in terms of the story. Right now the story is centered around two friends, two allies. Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens have been there for each other throughout the course of this battle against the Bloodline. We know it has been as established in the story that Kevin Owens didn't really feel like he earned this title opportunity at Bash in Berlin, but Cody Rhodes reassuring him, saying, no, if anybody has earned this championship opportunity, it is Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens accepts the title match, but we've seen these little hints of Kevin Owens creeping up behind Cody with the championship, reminiscent of what a heel would do as he would strike his opponent with a foreign object. And they want to get you to think that Kevin Owens will betray Cody Rhodes. We've seen guys like Waller and Austin Theory present that well-crafted video that demonstrated the many instances that Kevin Owens has betrayed his tag team partners, whether it was Sami Zayn, whether it was Kofi Kingston, Chris Jericho. He's done it time and time again. And when an individual shows you who they are, you gotta believe them, right? I don't think I can trust Kevin Owens, and I'm a fan of Kevin Owens. I mentioned this in that post-show reaction Friday Night SmackDown last week, which if you haven't checked out, please go ahead and check that out. You would know I'm a fan of Kevin Owens. You can see him behind me on this wall every time I record something. But the fact is, Kevin Owens hasn't been a champion, hasn't been a world champion, I should say, for quite some time. It's been years, 2017, since he was a world champion. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but that eats you up after a while. And I think we're going to see some real developments on this week's episode of Friday Night SmackDown leading into Bash in Berlin. When a competitor such as Kevin Owens and of his nature has taken a back seat for so long to guys like Sami Zayn, who had a championship match at Elimination Chamber in Montreal a couple of years ago, had to take a back seat to Cody Rhodes in his pursuit of the world title, I'm pretty sure it gets to a boiling point. It gets to a boiling point. Look for that development in that storyline, because Bash in Berlin right now is looking like a great show. Currently at this, time of recording of the podcast, we have 5 matchups listed. The aforementioned WWE title match between Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes. We have the world champion Gunther defending his title against the Viper Randy Orton. Most recently announced the women's tag team of Isla Dawn and Alba Fire defend their titles against former champions Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill. We have a mixed tag match. The Judgment Day, the former members of the Judgment Day, Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest, the Terror Twins, taking on Dominic Mysterio and Liv Morgan. And a matchup that I'm really looking forward to, CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre in a strap match. And it won't be just the regular strap match where 2 opponents are attached to the ends of one strap, but it's going to be like that whole, matchup where they have to touch the corners in order to win the match. That's my only complaint with it. I would much rather prefer it to be the old-fashioned strap match. But hey, nonetheless, I'm going to trust them. CM Punk and Drew McIntyre are one of the best in the world, certainly in the WWE at this point. So I trust what they're going to do with that matchup. That might be my only complaint. But again, look out later in the week. I will be producing another video for Bash in Berlin and predicting that matchup. And since we're talking about predictions, look out for the prediction video for AEW All Out, also premiering on this upcoming Sunday, same day as NXT No Mercy. Pro wrestling right now it's on fire, and having All In just occurring, yesterday, we have a week's worth of show, whether it's Raw, NXT, Dynamite, SmackDown. Obviously, you have Rampage and Collision, which I don't cover as much, but I still watch. Then we have Bash in Berlin, we have NXT No Mercy, we have AEW All Out. A lot of content to cover. So be on the lookout for the episode of the J Area podcast, as well as the clips that I produce, these prediction videos that I produce, and the post-show reactions to Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown. Of course, I will be watching the events themselves and producing my reactions to those shows respectfully. So be on the lookout. We're going to be talking a lot about pro wrestling. And as we bring this episode to a close, I always try to make time to thank you guys. And I appreciate the level of devotion and dedication that you've given me and this podcast and this channel, and really giving, just a pro wrestling fan like myself the opportunity and the outlet to voice his thoughts and opinions on the current product. If you're anything like me, pro wrestling has become much more than just a pastime. It's become a passion. It's become a form of expression. We look forward to the storylines. We look forward to the matches. We look forward to the moments that occur nearly every week nowadays. And if you are so fortunate enough to connect with a character or connect with a storyline, that leaves an imprint not only in your mind, but I believe in your heart, truthfully. And without, the risk of getting all mushy about it. Pro wrestling, in a sense, for me at least, and I'll speak candidly and honestly, for me, it's really changed my life, because it's given me an outlet and an opportunity to find myself and find my passions and find a way to become comfortable not only in my skin, but being able to interact with other individuals, not only in the sense of pro wrestling, but sports, film, entertainment. It provides everything any form of entertainment can have. You know, you have the musical aspect, you have the storyline aspect, you have the sports aspect. There are so many different aspects for a viewer to latch onto. So if you stuck with me this long in this episode of the J Area Podcast, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you guys. And as we continue to build and build the J Area, not only in terms of a following, but also in terms of the content, I want to hear from you guys and comment down below. What do you want to talk about? What are your thoughts about the current product, whether it's WWE, TNA, AEW, whatever the case may be? I want to continue to talk about pro wrestling, and the channel itself will only continue to grow with your support and with your devotion and dedication. So with that being said, if you guys enjoyed this episode, please consider giving it a like all the videos that you enjoy, comment down below what are your thoughts on the current situation of pro wrestling, and please don't forget to subscribe to the channel in order to keep up to date with all the pro wrestling videos that is produced on this channel, especially when we have all these prediction videos and all these reaction videos coming out later in the week. And of course, my name has been Jose Ramos Jr. Thank you again for joining me on this episode of the podcast, and I'll be seeing you all a lot more this week.